Tensions between the African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance over the Expropriation Act were on full display during the State of the Nation address. Public Works Deputy Minister Sihle Zikalala directly addressed Minister Dean Macpherson's recent comments on the Act, criticising his refusal to implement it. Zikalala described Macpherson's stance as not only unfortunate, but also detrimental to his department. The Deputy Minister joins us now. Deputy Minister, good morning. Welcome to the program. Thank you very much for your time. I mean, it wasn't veiled, your languaging, that you were talking about Minister Dean Macpherson. Why did you go after him in the debate?
Well, I had no intention to go after him, and I didn't go after him as a person. It was not a personal attack, but it was a reflection on the views that he had pronounced. Because if you say the act, which has been assented to, you will not implement it being a minister, that is tantamount to undermining the constitution of our country and the laws of our country. Once you are appointed as a minister, you get sworn into the office. And in that oath, you pledge to uphold the Constitution to as well as implement all other law of our country. If you then go publicly and say you will not be implementing this act, you would want to implement other things, it means you are going against that act.
Yeah. You say it wasn't personal, Deputy Minister, but when you say, you know, that his course of action is detrimental to his own self-development, and there's another thing you said in quoting MEC Dumisani Makhaya, which I'll park for now, I'll come back to later. It seems your big boss, the president, isn't too happy about this exchange. His spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, is quoted as saying, the expectation of the president is that ministers and deputy ministers must be able to maturely address any issues of disagreements amongst themselves in a collegial and professional manner. And the same applies to two members of the National Executive. Your response to that admonishment?
Of course, we must be able to address each other in a collegious way, in a manner that respects ourselves and the cabinet. But we cannot underplay the divisions that take place when policies are handled haphazardly in the media. In fact, one point that has been addressed in this debate is that all ministers are appointed by the president. That is according to the Constitution. That is also affirmed in the statement of intent. To go to say you will not implement the act signed by the president on its own undermines the office you hold, and it undermines the office of the president who assigned you to that responsibility.
So you stand by what you said, Deputy Minister?
In full, as I said, and there is nothing wrong from what I said. It is factual. It is based on the fact that Honorable Minister Macpherson said the act will only be will not be implemented as long as he is still an executive authority.
I want to come to this particular quote that you made in your address as well. You said there are many ministers who would not be comfortable with certain acts, but upon taking office, and this is the point you've been reiterating so far this morning, they must implement them. We are seeing what was perfectly described by the late MEC Dumisani Makhaya some time ago, where he said that racism combined with ignorance produces arrogance. It is this type of arrogance that invites foreign countries to attack our country and government based on information disinformation peddled not just by right-wing organizations like AfriForum and Solidarity, but by a minister who is expected to obey and uphold the Constitution. So there are two things intertwined there, is an accusation of racism against him, but also holding him partly responsible as well for the developments we've seen between South Africa and the United States. Would that be accurate?
Well, it will be accurate. If I say it's racism, racism is the at a philosophical level, it's discrimination. And you discriminate based on race, gender, or religion. Racism, it's when a person disregards other people because he thinks he is better, not because he's better because of knowledge or any other thing, but because of his color of the skin. And that is unfortunate, because we must respect each other. We must respect and build one South Africa, which we have fought for. And if you think in the current environment where blacks in general are suffering for land, they live in squalor conditions, and you think you should perpetuate the racist act that deprive those who are living in those conditions, it will be interpreted as racism. On your second point, which you correctly cover, if a minister talk bad about his own government, what would you expect to be the international community's response? The response from the international community will be that, no, that country is not coherent. Ministers are also proving that they are under siege, and this act is not accepted. Now, it is not only AfriForum that is taking us in a negative, that is reporting us in a negative way to the world, but even those who are in government. I said so to caution and call for unity and call for for pragmatism. We must think, act, but based on facts. The statement of intent that governs all parties that are in the GNU clearly indicates that our positions will be based on facts and knowledge that is proven, evidence-based knowledge.
So let me then come to this. Given what you're saying, and the short reading of the explanation that you've shared with us, Deputy Minister, is that you do believe that in the way that he's behaved, this is your Minister, Minister Dean Macpherson, that it is racist then by definition, based on the criteria that you just used. The presidency spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, is quoted as saying, the president wants you to iron out your differences, or wants you to iron out your differences in a mature manner. You are, for better or worse, custodians of this law now. How are you going to manage this relationship between yourself and Minister Macpherson? Do you both speak to each other? I mean, what's the relationship like away from the cameras, if this is what we see in the public domain?
We do interact in some meetings where we discuss issues of the department, and I think if necessary, it is necessary that we discuss this matter and find a way to implement it. Remember that the Democratic Party has taken this act to court. That will mean we must also ensure that the Department of Public Works, as the lead department, the custodian of the Act, must defend this Act. If we are then the first to cast doubt on the Act, how are we going to discuss it? So I'm hopeful that we will get time with the minister and discuss the matter.
Deputy Minister Zikalala, this gives us again more insight into the workings of the GNU as defined and composed here in South Africa, and the difficulties of parties who are diametrically opposed on ideological and practical issues such as expropriation, and whether you can get coherence out of the department. take us a little bit deeper. You are diametrically opposed. You do not approve of the stance that he's taken. You've made some serious assessments of his behavior, both from a racism perspective, but also from a doing reputational damage and material damage to South Africa, grouping him with AfriForum and Solidarity. I mean, be real with us. How are you really going to find each other in a way that does the work of what that ministry is intended to do?
It is, of course, expected that there will be differences from time to time. And that's why in the GNU, there are platforms and mechanisms that have been put in place to iron out issues. The first one is that ministers and deputy ministers should engage in the department as colleagues who are working there. And that should be done with respect, honesty, and integrity. The second platform would be that of the clearinghouse, where if there are differences policy-wise or issues that affect the working of the GNU, that clearinghouse is then a platform to address such issues. But what we cannot do is to be bullied to accept one individual or a particular group to impose themselves to frustrate transformation. Transformation is needed in South Africa as a program that will address the plight of Africans who suffered discrimination. Not only discrimination, we suffered dispossession, oppression and exploitation and discrimination for more than 342 years. And that is what we have to correct. That's why the ANC continues with the revolutionary program of addressing these conditions. It is these conditions that perpetuate poverty, that deepen unemployment and inequality.
I just want to go to this as we conclude, Deputy Minister. For background for our viewers, you say it's Macpherson's duty to implement the act as promulgated, to uphold the Constitution as per his oath. Despite the latest court action by the DA to challenge that act and have it basically done away with, last week party leader John Steenhuisen rallied behind the government, stressing that the legislation does not allow for the arbitrary confiscation of property or land. Macpherson, your minister, has also moved to assure investors, you saw that last Monday, that Section 25 of the Constitution guarantees fair compensation. So how do you read the DA stance in its totality then?
I would say the statement by Honorable John Steenhuisen is correct. The Act does not allow for arbitrary expropriation. The Act also prevents abuse of power, and it does guarantee the security of tenure and the right of ownership of property in the country. So based on that, I would say that statement was fair, accepted, and it should be the line that we take. I don't believe that the Constitution, especially Section 25, is in contrary, or the Act is contrary to Section 25. So I think that is the line we must all take.
All right.
This is what we must learn. When there are differences as ministers, we must know that the Act and the laws stands above. We must implement them. And that's why Minister Kwarube, having had discomfort about the Bella Bill, but she continued to stand and say, I am going to implement this act. Let us not politicize. These are the regulations are coming, and she outlined the process even in her debate yesterday.
All right, Deputy Minister, thanks for your time this morning. We appreciate it shedding light on the admonishment there from the President.